Hi, I'm John Martell. I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan, and honored to introduce our next guest today for our competitive advantage panel. Our guest is Anthony Dayton. He is the Chief Technology Officer at Qlik, and he is going to present Winning with Analytics, a platform for a data-driven sports organization. The panel will run for 30 minutes, including Q&A. With that, I'll turn it over to Anthony.
Cool. Thanks. So good morning, everyone. I appreciate you making the time, joining us here this morning. So I'm the CTO for Qlik, been with the company for about 10 years, and primary responsibilities around the product and product strategy. I'm going to take a few minutes this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about data, analytics, and sports, and also more generally where we see the BI industry going, some of the trends and changes we see in the industry with time. I'll also, with any luck, show you a little bit of software, so that should be fun. So first, a legal disclaimer, so you know it's a real presentation. So just a little background on Qlik as a company. Qlik is a public software company, about a $600 million a year software company based out of Philadelphia. The company was founded actually in southern Sweden in a town called Lund, also a university town. The development center still is in southern Sweden. We have about 38,000 customers around the world. And like I like to say, if you have 38,000 customers, you can say by definition you're selling to more than the Fortune 1000. And also you can say with some certainty that we sell from an industry perspective across a wide range of use cases from sports teams for sure, all the way to my favorite, the Peruvian fishing cooperative that uses our product to look for spot prices of fish. So there's a very wide range of use cases, a wide range of users and user types. We're about 2,000 employees around the world, and we've been growing approximately 30% annually for the last 10 years. So a little bit of sort of background on the company, et cetera. Just as a little bit of a personal side note, when I started with the company 10 years ago, it was a 50-person Swedish software company in southern Sweden that nobody had heard of. So we've certainly seen a transformation both as a company and as an industry over the last 10 years. So broadly speaking, what's driving change in BI and what's driving change in all of our businesses is the digitization and availability of data. So I like to sort of say it's not so much the data is growing, it's that we're doing a better job of collecting it and making it available to users for the purpose of decision making. So the availability of data inside our organizations, and this is particularly true for the sports industry, has and is exploding. But there seemed to be a split in the industry between those who think the major challenge is collecting and managing the data, and where we've been focusing our energy, which is on how do you take that data and put it in the hands of decision makers so they can make better decisions with that data. And that's particularly relevant here, right? Because we can't expect a player or a manager or a coach to be data literate. We can't expect them to come into a conversation with understandings of statistical weighted moving averages or the meaning of a particular kind of set of analysis. And yet, we want to enable and empower them to make better decisions on the field, in the contract negotiation, in the trade moment, right? And these are high-pressure situations where they really need to make good decisions, data-driven decisions that can really affect a season or a franchise value. So we think that the opportunity from a data perspective isn't just in collecting and managing large volumes of data, but in how you transform that data into actionable work that a normal human being can consume and use, right? Not data scientists. As an industry, I think we have sold you a bag of goods, right? As an industry, there's been an oversimplification of the challenge of how we take data and make it available to users for decision making. We tried to convince people that the answer to this problem are pretty charts and graphs, right? Visualization. And if we could just give people more visualizations, then they'd be in a better position to make decisions with the data. And I think that's an oversimplification of the problem, because the data value chain is far bigger than just the pictures, just the visualizations that we layer on top of it. So let me be clear, though. Visualization is an important part of making decisions with data. It is absolutely the case that as human beings, our capacity to understand information visually is something that we're born with, something we've evolved naturally as human beings. So it's absolutely the case that visualization is important, but it's insufficient in the totality of the use cases that we see. So we don't think that visualization alone can address the market requirements that we see here. Now, as an industry, there's been quite a bit of change. As I said, I've been at Qlik for 10 years, and over the course of that 10 years, we've seen nothing short of a revolution in the BI industry. When we started, the best in class for this industry were IT-driven reports. So the idea as an industry was we'd have a set of smart people at the center, typically in an IT organization, that really understood the data, that managed access to the data, and then delivered to the user a report. And what we've seen from a transformation perspective is effectively the entire industry is inverted. So whereas previously IT governed and managed the entire data experience, here we're seeing users demanding access to data and demanding access to the ability to answer questions with that data without necessarily going through IT. This is a theme I'll come back to in a moment. So a couple big trends we see in the industry. The first is the diversity of data. Data itself is moving out of traditional relational databases. It used to be the case that we could say, as long as we had a database connection, we could connect to any kind of data that an organization was tracking and managing. And that's decreasingly true. So certainly organizations still use databases, but they're increasingly moving data to the cloud. They're moving it into cloud services like a Salesforce or a Marketo. And they're also moving it into cloud sources like Redshift on Amazon. So we need to be more capable about connecting to sources that are outside of the traditional relational database. There's also a diversity of types of data. So we used to think of traditionally data was just rows and columns, anything you could represent in a spreadsheet. But increasingly we're looking at data like sentiment analysis coming off a Twitter stream, right? We want to be able to correlate what our fans are saying about a particular player or about a particular news event with, ticket sales or with a sentiment about a team. And these are very different kinds of data that we're looking to analyze and have part of our decision-making processes. From an analytic gravity perspective, it used to be reporting with a small amount of analysis, and today it's analysis with a small amount of reporting. Again, this inversion of the market, where reporting is becoming a sub-feature to the overall analysis market. If you're consumers and readers of the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and the Gartner Magic Quadrant on BI is the single most popular piece of content that Gartner puts out. In fact, you can make a good argument it's what keeps them in business. I think this year's Magic Quadrant is a big change in how they talk about the market. And they're specifically talking to this point, that the idea of a traditional report-centric architecture for managing and distributing data inside your organizations is simply insufficient. In fact, they have literally moved that entire use case to the back burner in favor of user-driven BI, user-driven analytics and analysis. And so that's important, obviously, for us as the innovator in that space and the ones that are talking about that. But I also think it's a good recognition of how far the industry's come over the years. So from a buyer perspective, it used to be the case that all purchases as it relates to data and analytics were driven by the IT organization. So this was effectively a technology purchase. We said the problem of data and analytics is a problem of the technology associated with storing and managing and processing that data. But what we're seeing is that today it's the business buyer, it's you, who are coming back to this conversation and asking for access to that data and, in fact, driving those purchase decisions. Again, I'll come back to this theme. Today, I think there's some conflict between the business and IT around data and information. The question we have as a group is, how do we resolve that conflict? And we'll talk about that in a moment. And last but not least, from a vendor perspective, we've moved away from specialized, or rather two more specialized analytic vendors that have a real point of view around how we can analyze and manage data, and away from generic reporting platforms and towards really specific purpose-built applications. So from an analytic value perspective, a lot of organizations exist on a continuum of use cases. So, and we can't say up front where we expect people to begin and end that journey. So from prescriptive analytics, understanding what's already happened, to diagnostic analytics, where you're really asking the question of why, to predictive, where we're starting to think about what if or what will be. There's a continuum of use cases. And organizations will find themselves at different points in that continuum. And in fact, you may find that even within an organization, there are different points that different groups within that organization may find themselves. For example, a finance group may find themselves very focused on explaining the past, whereas, when you're thinking about trade analysis of player trades, you may really truly be thinking about predicting the future. So you may find yourself at very different points. And our goal as a vendor is to really think about a full range of use cases across all of those needs and use cases. So if we could actually create a platform that let users work across that continuum, but allow users and different groups within a customer find their use cases and sort of section down the capabilities to the needs that they have at a moment, that's a really powerful capability. So we think that there's a full range of use cases. We don't think that any one particular solution is going to solve all of those. We want to be able to provide a full range of platform capabilities and let users select where they want to be on that journey. And the other thing we can say with some certainty is that wherever you find yourself today is not where you're going to be tomorrow. I think a very fair theme for this entire conference is the idea that we as an industry are on a journey as you add data to what have traditionally been gut decisions or best thoughts about the way things work, and adding data to a lot of those decisions. So wherever you are today, you need to have in place capabilities that allow you to grow into additional use cases into the future. So 3 things about Qlik that I think make our solution unique. So the first is this idea of seeing the whole story within your data. So traditionally, we've had a model of filtering or drilling down to insights inside data. And Qlik has invented this concept of associative search and association of data, I'll talk about this in a moment, that lets you see really insights across a whole range of different data and looking at all of the data all of the time. Second is a platform approach. So traditionally, we've thought of BI as tools, report building, right? Or as a desktop tool. And while we think that a lot of the capabilities of that are important, what we've really worked on, especially over the last few years, is building out a platform capability. A platform that lets you work from simple use cases, tool-like use cases, all the way through analytic app development in a single platform. I'll talk about that, and in fact show that in a moment. And lastly, the concept of the business user and IT. So we talked a little bit about this when we talk about the trends, that there's this drive to business users wanting to be in control of the analytic experience. From our perspective, this is not so much a conflict, but how can we create a common fabric or language where IT and business can work with and talk about data? So I've often said that if people ask me, what's the business Qlik's in? Qlik's in the business of creating a common language for IT and business to talk about data. So we need to move the conversation away from a conflict or a debate about who has access to the data, and rather to enabling or empowering business users or decision makers with data, with IT governance and manageability to provide things like security, manageability, governance, and all of the things that IT cares about. And if we can create that common language, then we're going to be in a position to be very successful. So those are three things that we're focused on. Let me sort of walk through those in a little bit more detail. The associative experience. So this is a great marketing term, association. What does it really mean? The traditional business intelligence approach for analyzing data has a drill-down metaphor. So the idea is we start with a lot of data, and we drill down, subsetting the data with each drill to a point of insight. Why was this invented this way? It was invented this way because 20 years ago, computers were slow and memory was expensive. And so if we wanted to create a performance end-user experience, we needed users to quickly subset the data down to a point where it was manageable for the computer to be able to actually analyze. And in fact, the traditional model was to pre-calculate all possible paths through the data. So that no matter what the user clicked on, we already had the answer. We didn't have to sit and wait and calculate things. And it certainly made sense 20 years ago when computers were slow and memory was expensive. The core invention of Qlik was to break that paradigm, was to look at that model and say, what if we could actually have all of the data available at all of the time, and as users made clicks, we would recalculate things in the context of that selection. So the core concept behind the product is the idea of green, white, and gray. You may have noticed if you look at the slides and anything Qlik, there's always this green, white, and gray metaphor. And the green, white, and gray is an analogy to the product. When you click on something in Qlik, it turns green. The things that are associated with that selection are white, and the things that are not associated are gray. And it seems like a simple concept, but from a database perspective, effectively you're looking at all of the data all of the time. And with every click, you're effectively running an inner and outer join for the geeks in the room with every single click. So you always have full visibility into the full set of data at any moment. And what we find, and what our customers will tell us, is that in many cases, the great insight from the data doesn't come from what you clicked on or what you expected to see associated with it, but actually comes from the gray values, for the things that would have previously been thrown out under the drill-down metaphor. It's the things that you thought were included with that selection, but in fact are not. So the example here might be looking at a particular team and expecting to have seen a player on the field with that game and seeing in fact that they were not. And realizing an insight about, oh, you're right, they were injured, or nope, they were out of that game, they weren't there for that play, they never threw that pass, they didn't pitch that pitch. And I'll show this to you in a moment when we look at the demo. So this is really the core idea behind QlikView: association, green, white, and gray, and a non-drill down based model. So shifting slightly from a platform perspective, again, traditionally as an industry, we've talked about tools for solving data analytic challenges. And the challenge with a tool is it typically is very prescriptive in terms of its workflow. It says, here's how things work. And it's certainly the case from a Qlik perspective. With QlikSense, we have a great self-service visualization tool with a point of view about how users should engage in the process of decision making. But I'll sort of let you in on a little secret since I'm the product guy. How did we build QlikSense? So we didn't start by building a tool. We actually started by re-platforming Qlik. So we took Qlik, our core engine, and we built a modern web development platform on top of it. On top of that platform, we built an application we call QlikSense. So that's our flagship product. That's, if you go to our website, that's what we're talking about on the website. And QlikSense is a great product, so no doubt about that. But underneath it is a really powerful platform that we used to build that product. And we know it's a really powerful platform because we used that platform to build our product. In fact, from a sort of a sequence perspective, we actually shipped QlikSense, and we didn't ship the platform, very purposefully, because we learned a lot as we built that platform. learned as a euphemism for the pain associated with being the first customer on your own platform. So we changed everything, right? We learned from that. We changed a lot of our APIs and our development tools, et cetera. And a year later, we made available the Qlik analytic platform, which is the platform on which we built QlikSense. And this is a very important concept because we want and expect customers to use our products. We also want and expect our customers and our partners to build on our platform. Because our view is that the range of analytic use cases in the future are going to span beyond simple visualization tools, but to include embedded analytics. So embedding analytics in your website, or embedding analytics in operational applications that your users use. And it will also expand to include full analytic applications. So we're actually building tools and applications for your users to make better decisions with data that are integrated into workflows and processes that your organizations already use, right? And we can also expect simple use cases like being able to take a chart or a graph and embedding it on perhaps a public website, right? On all of these capabilities rely on a modern platform to be able to pull off those things. In fact, we have customers today that use our platform, and they don't even use any of our user interface. They're simply using the engine as a calculation routine in some important decision that they're making. So you could imagine, for example, embedding the engine, the Qlik calculation capabilities, in a stadium entrance, where you're giving people feedback or giving them an offer, a coupon, based on who they are as they come through, as they scan the ticket as they walk into the stadium. Because we can quickly calculate what offer would be relevant for that, that fan. So again, that's not a traditional analytic use case. It's really about using the platform and embedding it in workflow and use cases that you have today. Last but not least, IT versus the business. So as I've alluded to, the idea here is that governance as a structure creates empowerment or freedom. So if we can create a flexible model for IT to provide the governance that they need and require, then we can open data to users to allow them to make decisions with that data without fear that they're going to screw it up, that they're going to break rules. So there's typically a kind of bimodal distribution within organizations about how this works. There's a set of data, typically in a data warehouse or in some big data store, that IT governs and manages. And the single most popular feature on top of whatever tool you've put on top of that governed data is export to Excel, right? Because the first thing that the user does when they hit that really high quality, well thought through data is say, great, but I had a slightly different question. Or, it's a great set of data, I'd like to marry it with this other data I have here on my desktop. And the typical response, from an IT organization is, don't do that, right? That's untrusted, ungoverned, unmanaged, bad data, right? And we don't want you to do that. In fact, this is a little bit of a side note, if you had a single metric that you wanted to track to understand how data literate your organization is, how effective they are at using data, and how effective you are as an organization in providing data to the users, I would argue that the one metric you could track is how many times export to Excel is clicked. You could literally have just a gauge on the chart, on the wall, big monitor, and just have a radar chart that says export to Excel how many times today. Because if your users are doing that, they're giving you feedback and saying, not good enough, I want something else. So our view, though, is that neither of these extremes is actually evil. The governed data at the center is critical, but so is that local data, the stuff on your desktop or that you have in a little local database. And in fact, if we can provide a common utility for both sets of data, that's really the holy grail. That's where we start to get real value. Because users may, in fact, be doing work that has a very short lifetime. It's okay that you're doing a model in your spreadsheet and you're going to use it once and throw it away. Right? That's okay. That's actually a good thing. That's how we create pace around decision making, speed around decision making. So just to wrap up, a couple of key use cases and things to highlight. couple of customers that are working with Qlik today. First, with the NCAA. We did a really great set of work around, with the NCAA on their public website, in conjunction with Turner Sports, promoting the College World Series baseball. And what was great about this is you'd go to the website and as we all are well aware, baseball is a very statistics-driven sport. There were a whole set of analysis and analytics on there, all driven from Qlik, tightly integrated into their public website. So, these are almost by definition not users you can train on a BI tool. They came to the NCAA website around the College World Series and were doing analysis. The NCAA was also using this internally, of course, around some more sophisticated use cases, but this was, I thought, really fun. In fact, it's still available today on the NCAA website. The second is the England Rugby League. And this is actually a very interesting use case. This is a use case that we see replicated across other sports leagues, some of which I am not allowed to publicly tell you about, but the use case is exactly the same. Some of these sports leagues may even be in the United States. And this is really around understanding player statistics and talent data. So getting more objective measures of player performance, especially across a wide range of, across the full length of a season, et cetera. There are some very cool things we've been doing with integrating that with video, with real-time positioning, et cetera, that is really sort of cutting edge. And last but not least, a slightly more pedestrian use case, albeit one with potentially higher financial return. Aramark is using our product to look at traditional CFO-style metrics, looking at how they're, where inventory is, where their sales is, what drives sales of concessions and stadium product over the course of a season or a game, et cetera. So there's some fairly traditional use cases. In room 204, which is conveniently located about 6 miles that way, we have a whole set of really cool demos and applications that we can show off to you, and I would certainly encourage you to do that. I thought I would take a minute or two here and just show you a particular use case I think is fun and interesting. So here, sure I have it timed out. So this is a fun application that we built, and just to be completely fair and transparent, we didn't do this with the Yankees or Orioles. This is public data for a single Yankees-Orioles game where we took all of the data from that game and put it into our engine. So here you can see, obviously, a baseball game is 9 innings. You can see a pitch tracker where all the pitches for that game were, who the pitchers and batters were, the pitch count, et cetera. But what's really powerful about the idea behind Qlik is, as the name would suggest, the click. So if I'm interested in when the New York Yankees were batting, I can click on the New York Yankees and select it. And so you can start to see the green, white, and gray showing up, although in this case we've turned the green for the Yankees to blue for obvious reasons. The Orioles is orange. And you can start to see who the pitchers were for this game. So immediately you have some insight right here, which is there were 6 pitchers for that game, and there's a set of pitchers who didn't pitch that game, which makes perfect sense, because either they were Orioles pitchers, because clearly they didn't pitch for the Yankees, or they weren't in the rotation that game. And so let's look at Andy here, who was one of the pitchers. Now, again, I click on Andy, and you can see all the batters that Andy faced over the course of that game. You can see all of the pitches that he threw over the course of that game. You can also get something sort of immediately valuable. He pitched the first 7 innings. He's the starting pitcher. All right, so we can say definitively that he didn't pitch the 8th and 9th inning. Right, and let's just take a specific example here. J.J. Hardy, when he faced J.J. Hardy. So now we've come to a point from an analytic perspective. We're looking at this pitcher versus this batter. Here are the roughly 6 pitches that he threw. Here are the ones that were called strike. Here are the ones that are called ball, et cetera. And you can also see the outcomes that pitching-batting combination had in this particular game. So this is gold if you're a pitcher, right, or a batter for that matter, or a team manager, really to understand how did I throw in this last game against this particular batter. And what's interesting is you can see, for example, that in this head-to-head meetup, there was not a home run. And I might, as a coach, have a memory of this game and say, you know what, I'm pretty sure that, well, let's say I can say definitively that the Yankees had 2 home runs hit against them in this game. And what happened here? This is not what I expected. So who threw the pitch that resulted in the home run? So now we can go ahead and click on home run, and we can see Chamberlain and Kelly were the pitchers that threw the pitch that resulted in the home run. They did it in the 7th inning. These were the relief pitchers that came in the 7th inning. So as a coach, I'm getting this, the value here is in the gray. It's in challenging my expectation or my memory of what happened in a game. It wasn't my leadoff pitcher, or wasn't my starting pitcher that threw the home runs. In fact, it was the 2 relief pitchers, and of course they only lasted less than an inning. And also, they threw only change-ups up the middle, right? So as a pitching coach, I'm getting some good feedback here. You know, this might be an opportunity as a pitching coach to spend some time working on those change-ups with these 2 pitchers. You know, maybe fastballs would have been a better choice. So again, the value of green, white, and gray, of being able to challenge your own expectations of the data. And here's a good example of finding an insight in the data that wasn't in what I expected. Now, I'm showing this to you on a laptop, which makes perfect sense because that's what I'm presenting off of. But it's also reasonable to imagine that a pitching coach, all right, I guess it'll be in front of a pitching coach isn't going to walk around with a laptop on the field. So every Qlik application is also fully mobile. So here's the exact same application on my mobile phone. Any luck? There we go. All right, so basically exactly the same set of work. So if I want to get to the same point where I was and look at a particular game, right? Let's look back at that 7th inning pitching and see what pitchers were thrown over the entire 7th inning across all the pitchers and all the batters, right? So I can have this right at my fingertips, right when I'm on the field, right, with the same fidelity and use case that I had on a PC, right, mobile optimized. So with that, I'm certainly open to any questions, although we've run a little low on time. So whatever I can do to be helpful or send you on your way. I'll be up here in front too, so you can certainly come on down if you have any questions. So thank you for your time.